I started in Italy in the 1980s working as a graphic designer on fashion products, and was lucky enough to work with some really great top photographers. I think this is great, maybe I can do this. Okay, no more graphic design, I'm going into photography. But I actually think that the wonderful thing about photography is it's a very expressive outlet. If you've got a sort of creative mind, because I happen to love fashion a lot more than photography, I was able to express my feelings about fashion through photography. Yes, I think that it's a great way to express your fantasies about fashion. Some fashion photographers who are particularly into fashion are effectively fashion designers or stylists as well, because even though they're taking somebody else's product, they're definitely adding to it in a big way. The natural sort of development from that was that I would actually start doing my own clothing just for photo shoots. And that's what started to happen. I've always been into the mid-century period, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, and I've got quite a substantial collection of clothing from that period. And I use that clothing in my personal photographic shoots because, again, it's about living out a fashion fantasy. And to represent that fashion fantasy, I use photography because that's the only method I have. Again, I constantly hark back to the classic period of cinema and of imagery, the mid-century period, in my work. And that can manifest itself in many ways, and actually in the Ellesse advertising campaign. I actually referenced, the classic Italian movies of the mid-century period, so the obvious ones like the Dolce Vita or Bicycle Thieves, which involve people riding around on scooters. And we followed a trend which has already been established by people like Piaggio, who have taken mid-century design and updated it in the new Vespa scooters. And we put somebody on that style of scooter, and we got them to do the kind of things that people would do in a movie. And the technology that's out there at the moment with digital cameras meant that we could effectively make stills from a movie. So it's always that kind of approach. If somebody looked at those photographs, they might not pick up on that, which means that when you retranslate and retranslate and retranslate and retranslate, hopefully you actually come up with something new. There's no embarrassment in where that original idea came from. It's how it looks in the end. So we got some contemporary imagery, but very much with reference to the mid-century. Well, I think in the contemporary Ellesse, in the imagery that I did, and to a certain extent in the actual collection, is you've got several major reference points. You've actually got the golden era of Italian post-war cinema, where suddenly the scooter became an icon through cinema. Also, the concept of young love and young romance of a very Italian type, which also manifested itself in those movies. You've also got a British phenomenon in there, which I think is the mod phenomenon, which is basically set a certain style for the past 40-odd years. So, which interestingly gained a lot from Italian and French cinema, plus British proletariat style, working class style. You can't also ignore the style of the football terraces in the late 70s and early 80s. That's also in there somewhere. So you've got a great mixture of things. You've got the Paninari style, which was effectively a kind of Italian mod style, but of the 1980s, which mixed Italian sportswear with American basic.